Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. So we actually got some good news for Xbox today, and then also some bad news depending on who you want to believe, because there are definitely some differing views going around from some credible sources. And I actually think that we need to circle back to a comment that Phil Spencer made last year as well. I think this is actually very important for this specific topic, and we're going to get into all of that today. Now, do also stay tuned for some Nintendo and Star Wars updates. But yeah, we do have a lot to get into, so let's just not waste any time here, and let's get right into it, starting off with the good news for Xbox. This is actually an update for yesterday's video because more information has since come out. But if you didn't watch that video, more or less what's happening here is that there was a corroborated leak that claimed that Xbox will drip feed Activision Blizzard content into Game Pass starting with the Crash Insane Trilogy this August. Now, allegedly, Spyro and the Tony Hawk remakes are also coming, quote-unquote, soon. But so far, we don't know a more specific window than that. Well, interestingly, Jez Corden from Windows Central has since responded to this claim on Twitter by saying, might be some coming sooner than that too. He then clarified that he had heard that we could get some Activision Blizzard content as early as the second half of July. Now, as to what games he could be referring to here, who knows? He only really said that he's heard some interesting things. So we'll see how all of that plays out. But the way I kind of look at all of this is whether it's July or if it's August, there's really not much of a difference there for me. But I think the good news is that we are starting to hear from multiple people that it does sound like Microsoft is finally prepared to drop some of those ABK games into Game Pass. Fans have waited for such a long time. I mean, this entire Activision Blizzard Microsoft saga has been going on for nearly 3 years. So yeah, I think fans have waited long enough for their inclusion. Now, unfortunately, we do have some bad news as well, though I will say some of this kind of depends on who you believe, if you believe anybody at all. And the reason I say that is because we have two prominent, well-known leakers that are claiming completely different things. So first here, we need to kind of rewind for a moment because we need to add context to this story to better understand what's happening with all this. So let's go back to 2022 when Nate the Hate claimed that there is a Banjo Kazooie project in development. Then 1 year later, in 2023, Nate doubled down on this claim and said Banjo remains an active project, but the project was only greenlit early last year. Much has to be done, and development can change a ton, ideas abandoned, eternal reboots, etc. Now, Nate has done a pretty good job as a quote-unquote insider. I'm not going to say he has a flawless track record, very few insiders do, but he does have a proven track record with some accurate claims. And I mean, even earlier this year, he was the one that broke the news that Xbox was considering porting games like Hi-Fi Rush to more platforms. And that's exactly what happened. So there is a reason that people believes in him and the things that he says. And for the first time in a very long time, Banjo fans have legitimate hope. I'm one of those fans myself. It feels pretty good, I have to say, to have hope for the first time in a very, very long time. Unfortunately, though, some of that hope has deflated a little bit today because Jez Corden on his podcast has painted a very different story. According to him, he said that I can tell you right now, categorically, there is no Banjo game in development as of this podcast on the 26th of June, 2024. There is no Banjo game in development right now. So, yeah, I'm going to go and put my sad face on here if that's true. Based on how he said it, he seems pretty confident. And maybe things have changed since Nate first leaked his information. As far as I'm aware, though, he hasn't responded to this new rumor just yet. Let me know if he has. But here's my thing with all this. We've heard from Nate the Hate. We've heard from Jez Corden. But what about Xbox themselves? Have they said anything at all about Banjo-Kazooie? And interestingly, the answer to that is yes. Yes, they have. Last year, in late 2023, Phil Spencer went on record and said this. You've seen from our history that we haven't touched every franchise that people would love us to touch. Banjo fans, I hear you. But it is true that when we find the right team and the right opportunity, I love going back to revisit stories and characters that we've seen previously. Now, he's not confirming anything one way or the other here, but from my own experience with Phil Spencer, he does like to tease things that they're working on, and sometimes he'll do that well in advance. And I will say that I think it's interesting to see him just randomly all of a sudden call out Banjo fans like he did. He didn't have to do that. So at the very least, that does indicate that it's a franchise that's on their mind. And for that matter, he's mentioned the importance for them to have more family-friendly content, which Banjo does fit into that mold. Now, maybe they just can't find the right team to work on a new Banjo game because Rare has already said themselves they have no interest. They would rather work on something new like Everwild, which, hey, that's perfectly fine. But that also means that Xbox has to rely on a different studio. And maybe they just haven't found that perfect fit yet, even if they do want a new game. Now, I know a lot of people will mention Toys for Bob. I think that they would be a good fit myself, but I think they're working on a new Spyro. I don't think they have plans for a new Banjo at this time. What I will say about all of this, though, because I see this every time a new Banjo topic pops up, there's always that theory that Banjo just doesn't hold enough weight in 2024. So it just simply won't sell enough for them to make a new game. But I don't really buy into that. If you look at the Banjo-Kazooie Smash Brothers reveal, there was a ton of excitement for that announcement. Fans were absolutely freaking out over it. And that trailer eclipsed 7 million views on just Nintendo's channel alone. It had millions upon millions more if you look at the other channels as well. So, maybe that fandom is still mainly on Nintendo's platform, which, that would make sense. It's the Nintendo kids that grew up with these games. But that's where I would say that Xbox's new, more multi-platform strategy comes in. If there was ever a game that could have success with that strategy, well, it would be Banjo-Kazooie. They could easily make a new Banjo game and release it on Xbox Game Pass, Nintendo, and also on PC, and I think that would be massively successful for them. I mean, just look at Crash Bandicoot as one such example. Similar things were said about that series. 3D platformers just aren't popular anymore. It's a dead series. That's what they kind of said about this game, and yet here we are, and the Insane Trilogy sold 20 million copies. So much for that narrative that 3D platformers can't sell in the modern era of games. For that matter, Nintendo's 3D platformers consistently sells very, very well. So I don't buy into this whole idea that this genre just isn't popular enough or that Banjo can't have success. At the end of the day, I think that if they were to release this on Nintendo, Xbox, and PC, I think a lot of people would be very interested. But for right now, it definitely seems like the future of Banjo is up in the air. There definitely seems to be some mixed messages with all of these different leaks. Now, I do look at Phil's response as maybe, an indication that they're at least thinking about it, but let me know what you all think about all this. Do you believe Jez Corden is right or no? Let me hear it in the comments below. Now, speaking of Nintendo, though, we actually got a small update for the Wii U out of all consoles. You can see their tweet here, which translates to we have run out of parts necessary for repairs. So as of July 3rd, 2024, we will no longer be accepting repairs for Wii U consoles and peripherals. Now, to be completely honest here, I'm a little bit surprised that they were actually still doing repairs. I think that shows their commitment to their fans, but with this news here, this is officially the end of an era. Maybe not a very good era for Nintendo, but it is a console with a unique experience that's not always easy to replicate because of its tablet controller. Now, thankfully, Nintendo has ported a large portion of its games over to the Switch, which really helps with the mass public who missed out on the Wii U and all of its games, but there are still a few games that are hard to replicate. Star Fox Zero comes to mind here, which uses that second screen in a unique way for its gameplay. I'm not going to say it worked well, but I don't know. For anybody who owns or owned a Wii U, now that it's truly the end of the Wii U era, let me hear your experience with that console. Do you have fond memories with it or not? I'll say for myself, I was actually really excited when it first got announced. I remember talking to my friend about it and how I pre-ordered because I thought it was just so much better than the Wii. I grew up as a Nintendo kid, but I was not a fan of the Wii and its motion controls. That just ruined that console for me. So I was excited for the return of a more traditional Nintendo console. Unfortunately, though, it didn't exactly have the same success as the Wii, and that was a big letdown for me. But, here we are, and I still think that it had some good games, so definitely let me hear your thoughts about it in the comments below. Now, on to our last story. We got an update for Star Wars Outlaws. It is set to release next month on August 30th, but you never completely know because there could always be a delay last minute. We've seen that happen with games before, but in this case, it looks pretty set in stone by this point because Ubisoft just announced that it's officially gone gold. So if you're really excited about Star Wars Outlaws, there you go. You'll be able to play it next month on August 30th. Do me a favor, though. I want to hear y'all's opinions about this game. I think for me, I can see its potential. It seems like a very ambitious Star Wars game, and in a lot of ways, I can see how that's exciting for Star Wars fans. But at the same time, I don't really trust Disney's version of Star Wars, and I also don't trust Ubisoft. So the combination of the two just doesn't really instill me with a lot of confidence. I mean, at least when it came to the Jedi Fallen games, you had Respawn working on it. That's a studio that I very much trust. But Ubisoft, I don't really feel that way about them. So I'm going in with a lot of skepticism for the time being, but maybe that's just me. So let me hear your all's opinions about what you've seen so far. And do you think this will be a big hit when it releases next month, again, on August 30th? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But as always, do hit that subscribe button. And until next time, peace out.